I'm sure you've had this kind of experience. In a casual conversation, you share something you've been interested in lately, and one of your colleagues will say, "Oh, that reminds me, have you seen this?" I love when this happens. So I'm always interested in the ways in which we lose touch with truth. How and why does it happen? A brilliant friend recommended me the podcast, This Is Your Brain on Deep Reading, which is Ezra Klein in conversation with Marianne Wolf. Now, the main subject of the podcast was reading, but I had three takeaways on this subject of our slippery relationship with reality. The first is we are increasingly susceptible to non truths and to constructing our realities in narrow, self reinforcing ways. Why? Because we are engaging in more shallow, quote unquote, shallow ways with what we see and read, meaning just constantly scrolling and skimming. And we are facing a very high volume of information. There's more stuff coming at us than we could possibly consume and digest. So, lack of deep engagement plus high volume of information leads to our susceptibility to non truth and our tendency to constructing our realities in these narrow and self reinforcing ways. Takeaway number 2, double clicking on this idea of shallow versus deep engagement. It turns out when you're skimming versus deep reading, your eyes do different things. Your brain does different things. And you actually relate differently to how you sequence and digest the ideas. While in skimming, you're absorbing things more linearly. In deep reading, you're actually going back and forth, connecting ideas differently in space and time. And those differences become even more visible and obvious if you look at reading on paper versus digitally. Which takes us to 3, and brings it all together with a question that Ezra Klein actually asked. Is it the information that we are consuming that matters? Or is it how we engage with information that informs whether we develop a flawed conception of truth? That's the dramatic question I was left with. In a world where we deeply engage less and less, are we actually able to maintain connection with reality? I think we are, and I think we'll continue to be able to. And also, I think the behaviors and relationships and tools that used to keep us grounded don't seem to be quite enough anymore. Just some of my recent food for thought. Thanks for listening.